The sliding crosscut table is the holy grail of table saw accessories, and today we're going to make one that's much cheaper and better than anything that you can buy. And we'll talk about why this is far superior than using a miter gauge or a sled. This incredible video is brought to us by Squarespace. I don't have this completely planned out, so I'm kind of working on the fly, but I have a path that I want to go down. I think I'm going to extend my table saw by 14 inches. So the crosscut table is out here and then can run through this way. To do that, I've got some huge pieces of angle iron. This one will be connected right to the table saw. And then this one over here, I'll have to make some legs and attach the legs to there. So it's gonna come out about 14 inches. On top of these pieces of angle iron will sit a sheet of plywood. And then on top of the plywood will be these linear guide rails. And it's gonna go on here. And then I'll have to cut another piece of wood that'll sit on top of these linear guide rails. I'm gonna put these up here to demonstrate how this is going to work. Pretend these two linear guide rails will be over here. A piece of plywood will be attached to it like this. They will have to be in perfect parallel. And then this will come all the way back here for 40 inches of crosscut, and then we'll slide all the way up here to get past the blade. First thing I want to do is cut my two sheets of wood. The bottom piece is going to be 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood, and then the top piece, which is going to be the extension of the table saw, will be some 3/4 inch black melamine.
Never gonna give you up.
So now I'm going to drill the 4 holes in the angle iron so I can attach it to the table saw. I'm going to drill them oversized so I have a little bit of play on getting that lined up perfectly with the top of the table saw. Hopefully, got these lined up right. Gonna go on there, and some nylon locking nuts. If only I had help. If only. You're gonna see me weld some legs. If you don't have a welder, hold up. We're gonna talk about what you can do in a minute here. The other piece of angle iron will be held up with these 2 pieces of square tubing, but I need to make them adjustable so I can get the height perfectly level. So I'm going to take a nut and bolt and weld it to the bottom. That way I can screw up or down on the bolt to change that height. It's okay to show off the crappy weld job. You can show that. I want the ordinary woodworker to be able to make this. So if you don't have a welder, what you can do is drill holes in the steel and then just use a sheet of plywood and bolt this to a sheet of plywood, and then they make adjustable feet that's made just for plywood. I got these rails cut to length from Online Metals, so I didn't have to cut them. You should be able to drill into them with a drill press, possibly with a hand drill and a little bit of muscle grease. Muscle grease, is that a thing? I had to round over the bottom edge of the plywood to match the fillet of the angle iron, but this will drop in here like so. Then this will drop in here like so. I've already gone ahead and drilled holes in the bottom part of both angle iron pieces, so now I can bolt the plywood to the angle iron. I have to cut a rabbet on the bottom side of this top piece to work over the bolts that we put in there. I didn't see that coming. Typically you would do this at the router table. I can't find the router bit that I need, so I'm just gonna do it at the table saw and nibble away a rabbet. So when I put this on here, it slides so good. It slides, oh, it's insanely satisfying. So I think what I wanna do is I'm gonna put in 1 screw here and 1 screw here. And that gives these 2 rails a pivot point. And then I can attach the top to it, and then as I slide the top along, they should put themselves into perfect parallel. I don't know what I'm doing. If you're watching this video because you think I know what I'm doing, you're watching the wrong video. But again, I just want to put this on here. I could do this all day. Ooh. Oh, that fell off. Get back on there. I got 1 screw in each one so they can pivot. Now I've got some double-sided tape on top of here, and I'm gonna put a board on here. And then if I push this down here, it should force itself parallel. So now I'll throw a screw in down here. Right now I just have this piece with double-sided tape attached to the guide rails. It works really, really good. It is slightly out of square, or at least out of square with my fence. So if I measure from here to here, it's off by like a 32nd. The bolts on the angle iron, I can loosen them, put a slight little spacer in there, like a feeler gauge, just to bring this side out just a hair. And I'll just use different size feeler gauges as a wedge in there until this gets perfectly parallel. What I really should be doing is making it parallel with the, what do you call this thing right here? T-track. The T-track. It needs to be parallel with the track and the saw. So if my removable fence drops into place right here, it comes back, I have a good
40 inches
of crosscut. I've got to get that height perfect. It is real good right there, but it needs to come up down here. And then I gotta get that out that way. So we got a little bit of calibration to do. So as we're calibrating everything, I realized like I need to cut a part of this angle iron off. So my fence, because right now it's blocking the fence. I rarely use my fence on this side of the blade, but when I do need to put it on the side of the blade, it's a handy thing. If you don't have the metalworking tools to cut this piece off, it's not 100% necessary. When this was on there, that's where my fence stopped. After I removed it, I gained about 1 extra inch. To me, every inch counts. I thought of a much better way to calibrate the rails to the miter slots in my table saw. So I took out all the screws and I just have 2 screws at the very end here so they can pivot left and right. I made this temporary sled with T-track, and I had to add a little bit of tape on the edge so there's no slop, and that falls right into the miter slot of my table saw. This end is double-sided taped to the slide blocks that are on the rails. So now that everything is attached, I can slide this sled back and forth, and that pulls the rails into perfect parallel with the miter slots on my table saw, and then screwed them down. I also talked about having this wing perfectly in plane with the table saw. I decided to have it go a little bit below the surface so I could calibrate it post screwing everything to the table saw, and then I can add little spacers on the slide blocks here. There is a little bit of flex to this melamine, so to combat that, I got this extruded aluminum. There's no flex to this at all. And I'm just gonna screw it to the bottom side of this, and that should keep it nice and flat. We got that screwed on the bottom of the board, no more flex, quite heavy. So the next thing I gotta do is transfer these 16 holes to here so we could screw this down. This is a little tricky, but I found some transfer screws, which are basically little screws with a point on the top, and that point will make an indentation on the bottom of this, and I'll know where to screw. So check this out. It's a little screw with a point on there, but it's also has an end that will accept a wrench. So I could screw that into the block, and it's got a little point, and I'll keep doing that. So I have them positioned roughly where I want them to go. If you're wondering why I have them so close together, is they need to come all the way back here without falling off the track, giving me
40 inches
of crosscut, and then they need to come all the way up here so it at least gets past my blade. I did order a couple more that I'm gonna put on the end here. That means they're gonna come off the track and back on. I don't know if it's gonna work. I don't know if it's gonna catch when it hits that rail or not. So I wanna make sure that I at least have these guys set. And then if I can use 2 more to add some stability, I'll use them. If it doesn't work, we'll be okay. We're almost ready to screw on the top. If I were going to do this again, I would make this piece out of plywood instead of melamine because it has this chip core and it's not easy to screw into and it chips out very easily. And if I wanted it black, I'd either paint it or laminate it myself. So just something to note, this is not easy stuff to work with unless you're just cutting rectangular squares. So the next thing that I need to do is I'm going to chamfer the edges of the rails because these 2 sliders are going to come off and then come back on. So I've got my little Fordham grinder here. It's like a Dremel, but on steroids, much better. And I'm just going to chamfer the edges. Remember a few seconds ago when I said if I was going to remake this, I would do it out of plywood? I went ahead and remade it out of plywood. This was just chipping out way too much. I wanted it to look good and it turned out to just be really ugly. The core on here is just difficult to screw into, screw strip. This is no good. So I remade it out of plywood and I got it screwed down. And it works so good. I am so happy. These 2 come off the track and it pops right back on with no issues. And there's a little bit of, like when it comes back on, there's a little bit of like a click when it hops on. But this is after I make my cut. It'll go past, that falls off. I'm already done with my cut. And then when I'm pulling back, it kind of hops back on. I think even if it hopped back on during the cut, it would still be okay because it's gonna be okay. This is so good. So now my current problem is it's not at the same height as my table saw. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to add little spacers in there so I can get this the exact perfect height. Right now, we're a little below the surface and I know that I'm going to add some laminate on here and I'm still a little bit below the surface. So I'm gonna take a bunch of playing cards and I should be able to figure out the exact spacer that I need. So I know I need a piece that thick between the guide block and the top panel. So we finally got the perfect height. It took a lot more effort than I thought. So I had to make a bunch of these little spacers and then sand them down, test to fit, sand them down some more, make new spacers. It actually took probably an hour and a half to get that height perfect. But we are in business. I want to keep this from coming out all the way. So if I flip this upside down, I can put a T-bolt in here on that piece of aluminum extrusion, screw that down, then I can glue and screw a block onto here and it won't be able to come past. This might be the last time I use a miter gauge for a 90-degree cut. Fingers crossed. Glue a little piece of spongy foam to the back. Now it has a nice soft stop. I'm not going to do the other side so I can easily take the sled off and on. I don't have to worry about it going too far because I'm already past the blade here. I'd have to go really, really far to make it fall off. The next thing I got to do is figure out how to make it stationary when I just want to do regular cuts, so I don't want it moving back and forth. To keep this locked from moving, I'm going to drill a little hole on the side of the board here, and then I'll have to notch out the side piece. I think I'm just going to use a little hex key. We all have these hex keys laying around from various pieces of furniture and projects that we got. Locked. We went ahead and cut the laminate slightly too big. I think my contact cement is getting old. We had Daniel go out and get some fresh contact cement. So I got some spacers in there to help me get everything lined up, and then I can pull the spacers out. And just press that down. We cut the laminate oversized, and then we used a flush trim bit and a trim router to flush that up. Got that back in the table, and that looks so good. I am getting so excited, and it's just so smooth. The reason this is going to be far superior to a miter gauge or a sled is, if I pull my miter gauge back, it falls out of the track about right here. I have 11 inches of crosscut capability. This is going to come back all the way over here, and I will have 40 inches of crosscut capability. And the fence on this is going to be about 36 inches long, which is much longer than the fence on this. Now, I could modify this if I wanted to make a longer fence. But what about a crosscut sled? Ugh. It's super heavy, so it is a pain to get out. But I've got a much longer fence, and I can come out to about right here before it tips. And I've got 20 inches of crosscut, half of what our sliding table is going to be. The disadvantage of the sled is I also lose a little bit of height on my blade. I'll have the full blade height with the sled, which is going to be awesome. This is going to be a game changer in my studio. Like a total game changer. I got this fence from Amazon, and then I got this piece of 1/4 inch angle aluminum from Online Metals. And I'm just going to bolt this to the back. And the reason I need the aluminum on the back here is the aluminum is how it's going to attach to the table. I'm just going to use some of these T-bolts that slide into the back here, and then drill some holes in the aluminum, and then bolt it on here. No, nothing special. Aluminum, you can cut with woodworking tools, so you don't need any special saws. Like if I needed, this already came to size, but if I needed to cut it down, I could do it at the miter saw. That one tried to go right into my eye. I used to have the saw stop sliding crosscut table. That thing was absolutely amazing, insanely well built, and a pleasure to use. And it looks like Harvey makes something that's very similar. There are two reasons why I got rid of my sliding crosscut table. One, it was just way too big. And two, every time you remove the fence, you have to recalibrate it. You could keep the fence on there and slide it back to have it out of your way to do your normal rip cuts, but then you have this weird, you feel trapped and you feel weird at the table saw. I never enjoyed that. I never want to feel weird at the table saw. So my version is much smaller, just as functional, and my fence is going to come off and quickly go back on and lock into a perfect 90 every single time. That's why I think this DIY version is superior to the expensive ones that you can buy. My fence is going to have this dowel pin that's going to be mounted here, and it's going to drop into a brass bushing. That's going to give it this pivot point, and on the other side is going to have another dowel pin that will hit a stop, and then we can lock our fence into a perfect 90 every single time and quickly take it on and off. These pins from McMaster Carr, it's got a 1/4 20 thread on one side and then
chamfered
on the other side. Now we got to drill the hole for the bushing. So then we're just going to epoxy the brass bushing into the hole. While that is drying, I'm going to put in another peg over here. So it'll go into that fitting, and then that peg will hit a stop. So got to drill some holes and pound some pegs. And drill some holes and pound some pegs. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about.
Drill some holes, pound some pegs. Drill some holes, pound some pegs. Drill some holes, pound some pegs.
So we need to cut a little section out of the table for our stop system. And the best way to do that is with a wiggle saw. So then here, I can screw on a piece of T-track to the side making sure it is below the surface so no pieces catch on it. And then we're gonna use this stop from Rockler, but we gotta modify it so it's not above the surface, and I don't think I need this screw. I think we're just gonna replace that with a regular nut, because once we get that dialed in, we won't have to adjust it very often. That is now below the surface, and I can lock that into place. So this drops into there. That smacks up against the stop. This isn't my most trusty square, but it's gonna be good enough for now, and we can super dial it in later. There we go. It's probably really close, but it's not perfect yet. We got other things to worry about. I've been wanting this for such a long time. This is so exciting. So the next thing I need to do is figure out how to lock this in place. I am thinking a meg switch on and off magnet, and then we can put a piece of steel, we'll basically inlay a piece of steel onto the board here, and then we'll have a quick on and off magnet. And this is rated at 160 pounds. We'll see if one will do it. If one won't do it, then we'll have to do two. I cut out this template over on the bandsaw so I could use that as a template to route out this pocket. If you don't have a metal cutting bandsaw, I suggest just going to get 1-inch bar stock from Home Depot and use a hacksaw to cut that to length. I do want to thank Andrew Klein for helping me come up with this calibration stop system. I hit a roadblock. I emailed Andy and said, hey, I think a meg switch is going to work really good here. I just can't quite figure it out. He hopped on a phone call with me. We brainstormed and came up with this. This is going to work absolutely great. Super quick, easy, and perfect every time. So I had to notch out the aluminum to hold the meg switch. So that fits pretty good. So now I got to cut a piece of wood that will screw into here that will then screw into the aluminum, so the on and off switch is permanently in there. I'm going to show this in use and give you all the little detailed shots that you're looking for, but first I'd like to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Squarespace. Given the choice of creating things in the shop or working on my website, obviously I'm gonna choose being in the shop, and that is why I use Squarespace. Get this, I've been using Squarespace for almost 10 years. That is absolutely bonkers. That's a lifetime in the internet age. My buddy Jordan recommended that I use Squarespace, and I have not looked back since. People will ask me in person, do you actually recommend using Squarespace? And at 100%, I'm not just trying to give you a bunch of marketing BS. I've been using them for 10 years by my own choice. Before they were a sponsor, of course, I recommend using Squarespace. It just makes my life easier. It makes running my business just so much easier so I can focus on the creative stuff. You don't even have to have a business. If you're just a hobbyist or you just want a place to show off your work, Squarespace is the perfect place to do so. They've got a number of beautiful galleries just to show off your pieces. You can easily set up a form so people can contact you. If you want to sell stuff, both digital and physical items, you can do that with Squarespace. Visit squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, visit squarespace.com/makesomething for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. I added this plastic front for two reasons. One, I can use the saw curve in here to position my pieces and know exactly where my blade is going to cut. And two, the extension pushes the cutoff piece past the blade so it doesn't get caught in a tooth and come back and hit me in the face. The reason I only have this set up to do 90-degree cuts is, let's say I wanted to cut a 45. The fence would actually have to be much longer. For angles, I think it's just gonna be much easier to use my miter gauge for that. Plus, this already has positive stops at all the common angles. There will not be any plans for this, which is why I was very detailed in the video. In fact, I'm hoping people that are smarter than me will come up with much better versions so I can learn from them for version 2.0. In about a month, I'm going to do a follow-up video over on Patreon where I'm going to answer all the questions that you have down below and talk about how well it is performed and what changes I would make. In fact, I already have a better stop calibration system, and I'll talk about that then. There'll be a link to my Patreon down below. Good luck.